Chapter 3. Like before, our assistant, now called Eugene, lets us know that we don't have a lot of money here at the studio. We can barely afford a best boy, let alone an office boy, and the coffee tastes terrible. I mean, these are all just character bits, but we are going to try to hire someone to take care of the office. But now, what are we doing with our production? We have now our first report on our production from Zoo Pictures, the project called Miss Rita. And it looks like we are substantially over budget, 15% over budget. But crew stress seems pretty manageable at 49%. And now my strategy here, in order to make a better movie than the previous attempt, is not to try to do a balancing act between, let's say, the project and the people. As it says here, like in the previous playthrough, when we started off this production, it was somewhat down the middle, the way we were, what we were putting first in our professional life, either the movie itself, the quality of the movie, or the people I work with, family members, and so forth. In the previous one, I tried to have a balancing act because that would result in a mediocre result across the board. Not so good family relations and not so good relations with the crew, and also not a very good movie. This time, though, I'm going to put everything I possibly can into the project. I've already made a decision somewhat like this by rejecting the friendliness of my niece, but I'm going to continue doing that by continuing to reject the people's concerns over the project's concerns. I'm going to be focusing on the project's concerns and trying to get it as good as possible. You can see here by the personal relationships, we are doing quite well with the actress Zeno Cooper. Previously, Vincent Cooper, the actor, we weren't getting along very well with him, but we were getting along very well with our niece Josie, but not this time. This time, we are simply trying to cut Josie out of this process altogether. So we are somewhat doing the opposite of what we did last time, which the expectation is would result in a better movie, or at least a more successful one. Okay, now the self-reflection, that was a good little exercise. Now, what else does Jean, our assistant, have for us? And it looks like someone named Olga Tomerlin just dropped off a draft of a certain screenplay last night. And this is something new here because, of course, I decided not to write the screenplay this time around. So someone has to write this. This is something new that's being done as a result of that choice. So that's good. And now I'm skimming through the pages. It looks like Jean has already gone through the script and made some notes and made actually an executive summary. And I'm saying I pay an assistant's wages. And in response to that, I get a doctor, a head shrinker, and a script reader too. So Jean is the go-getter assistant who's going to play all roles in my life, even though it's just working as my assistant. So what's the verdict on this script by Olga Tomerlin? I don't even know who this is, Olga Tomerlin. Who is this? So Gene folds his arms critically. I'm not sure you're going to be pleased. Overall, it's fantastically written. It's got the smarts I want, but the novelty is a little off the mark. Then again, the intensity is more or less what you wanted, so maybe it's not a total wash. So here's how the current script looks. And now this is very different from what the previous project was. The previous project had a lot of originality, a lot of intellectuality. It was supposed to be fairly relaxing, and the quality was somewhat high, but for different reasons. I actually like the way this is shaping up here. We want a nice balance of original and familiar. We want it to be somewhat intellectual, but we want it to be more accessible. And but this 50-50 between intense and relaxing, I suppose it could be more intense, right? Not as relaxing, but we're not completely off base here. So let's see, what are we going to do about this? We can't afford to spend any more money, approve it as it is, pay for a rewrite, focusing on fixing, or save money by doing the rewrites myself. No, we're not doing that. So do we pay for a rewrite? What do we want to do? Let's see what happens here if we pay for a rewrite. Because as the producer here, I mean, these are the times to make the correct decisions. It's okay to make wrong decisions further along in the process, but the most important decisions are the early ones. And so this is a very important decision, what we do with the script. So how are we going to fix this? Do we want to focus on fixing the novelty, the smarts, or give the writer free rein to improve the script, even though it may drift further from the original intentions? According to Gene's report, the script is very well written. In that sense, I guess it might not be a bad idea to give the writer some free rein to improve the script. I'm pretty happy with the level of novelty here and the smarts. So let's go with that. Let's give the writer free rein to improve the script. I assume we can always reject this down the line. And this is something that now it's a little, this is very unorthodox for a producer to give the writer free rein. And I don't know what relationship we have with this writer, but let's just string this writer along for a bit, see what Olga comes up with. And but this is very strange. This is, I mean, as independent movie makers, maybe we just have to deal with this sort of these sorts of loose connections, these loose business relationships to result in a quality movie. But I am a little nervous about the lack of a business relationship here with this Olga. And now I say to Gene, it's not going to be a good picture unless the writer's happy with it. That's not necessarily the case. Tell Olga to take some time, work out the kinks, but for heaven's sake, make it good. That's all that matters. And so Gene, of course, agrees with me. And now we're going to talk about the director. Now, previously, I directed the movie myself, which was a terrible mistake. This time, though, we have a choice to have someone else direct it, which is what we're going to do. But we have a choice between someone who would be considered just a manager, hiring someone competent but cheap. In other words, someone who sees a movie production as basically an exercise in managing people and budgets and time, and is very good at keeping things moving efficiently. Whereas you could also hire someone who's a little less of a managerial type and more of an artist, more of someone who tries to adhere to certain standards and also may have a vision. Now, of course, the costs and benefits of that are obvious, right? You are risking the production going off track if you hire somebody who has more of an artistic sensibility. However, if you hire the right director, in other words, someone who's famous and someone who's marketable, someone whose name could actually sell the movie, then you get the benefits of that, the publicity from that. And I'm going to say that's probably the right thing to do with this kind of movie. We're doing a romantic melodrama set in the Midwest, and we're going to try to get stars to play in this movie. I don't think having a director who's just a manager is going to be the right director for this. You want someone with prestige, maybe even someone who has experience from the stage, who can bring that experience to the movie. But anyway, we want someone with an ego as big as, let's say, the players, the actors who are going to be in this movie, who can handle these actors and their performances, and also bring a vision to this setting of this sleepy Midwestern town. So let's go with that. We're going to bring in a famous director. Even if they might want to meddle, hey, that's fine. That's why you hire someone famous, to meddle. All right, and I'm sure Gene will be okay with that. Although Eugene says that's going to put a mighty big hole in the budget. So he did a little research on who might be available. Okay, here are some directors to consider. Wow, imagine having these choices. Okay, look at these choices here. Now, again, we are in the mid 1950s. So all of these directors we're seeing here are basically some of them are in their heyday. Some are less, some are more in the latter part of their careers, like John Ford. John Ford was a huge director in the studio days. And then in the immediate post-war era, like, he became this very famous director of Westerns, as he was during the wartime period. But when you get into the 1950s, John Ford became less of a cultural cachet. Like, movies were changing, and John Ford tried to adjust with these changes by making his movies a little more complex, where the heroes of the Westerns, for example, were not always these white knights who were saving the settlers from the evils of the wilderness or whatever. try to be a little more complicated, but audiences just weren't into that kind of, let's say, revisionist Western. They were more into hybridized Westerns like Shane and like what Howard Hawks was doing with the Western, like combining them with the family melodrama and sometimes with comedy, you know. So John Ford, we're going to reject. Also, I don't think John Ford is going to be able to handle the kind of method acting we want to have for this production. Now, who could handle that? Frank Capra? No. Frank Capra was even more like out of the picture by 1955. I mean, yes, a huge director during the heyday of the studio period, but after the war, again, his kind of movie was somewhat passe, like It's a Wonderful Life or Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That kind of idealism, that Americana idealism, was simply not something that the audience was for. Now, David Lean is an interesting choice, but we're not quite in the David Lean uh, epic period. When he made Bridge on the River Kwai, that was somewhat after this in 1957, when he became this director of huge epics. The movie we're proposing here is not going to be a big epic in terms of the logistics of the production. You know, we're not going overseas. We're not going to this exotic location where you want all the production value of that location. And we don't have this epic story that has a lot of different characters and historical events coming into play. So David Lean is out. Now, Billy Wilder is an interesting choice, but Billy Wilder is obviously a director of comedies mainly. He did other movies, but his sensibilities were mainly towards comedy. So I would say no to Billy Wilder as well. That leaves us two choices, John Huston and Elia Kazan. John Huston is a pretty good choice, because John Huston is someone who really can handle big stars in dramatic movies, and he's really good with genre. Like John Huston really understands different genres that can play in different genres, like the mystery film, like the action adventure, or even comedies that he made. And we're talking now about the 1950s, right? Um, Now he can probably handle this production, but again, kind of like with David Lean, like what John Huston really specialized in the 1950s was showing you exotic locations and showing us usually men under great duress, usually with a war time setting or a war setting of some kind. Or you have like the elements of nature coming into play and it's man against nature, that kind of thing. And he also made an adaptation of Moby Dick. Like he was into these kind of literary adaptations that were on a huge scale. Now that leaves us with Elia Kazan, who is probably the best director for this material. There is one big caveat with Elia Kazan, however, which is probably obvious to anyone who knows Hollywood history. Now, why Elia Kazan is a good choice? Well, you can see it right there on the screen. Elia Kazan is the director of Streetcar Named Desire, someone who was experienced as a stage director working with method actors like Marlon Brando. It also made a movie with James Dean, East of Eden, using the method acting of James Dean in that movie. He would be the perfect person to direct this movie about a sleepy Midwestern town in which, you know, hot love is brewing between a man and a woman played by major stars who could have this kind of method acting style. And that would really jazz up the intensity of it. However, there is that huge caveat, and that has to do with some of what's going to happen in this game, which is the anti-communist witch hunts that are happening. Elia Kazan, of course, is someone who did cooperate with the committee, the House Un-American Activities Committee, and name names. And so to have this person now involved in our production, remember previously in the other playthrough, I tried to have a neutral approach to the political situation, which was going to displease everyone, right? I didn't really take a stand. But now this time I'm going to try and be a moral person here. And I would be someone who is completely critical of this anti-communist witch hunt as being an overreach that destroys people's lives, accusing people without evidence, or even with evidence, but without due process that they should be afforded. And so to have Elia Kazan as part of this movie, I'm taking a huge risk. However, this probably is a good choice from, if you're going to look at it like cynically, like as an analyst, like how this would work out. Having Elia Kazan direct this movie as someone who did cooperate with the House Un-American Activities Committee, when these people are going to come in, and I assume they're going to come in later, having that cooperation would actually help the production move along. Will probably not be interfered with by the government authorities. But I, however, my character is going to still be strongly against this effort to hunt for communism in the Hollywood industry. So we're going to go with Elia Kazan. It'll be good for the movie, and it'll be good for keeping things, let's say, civil with the witch hunters who are going to be coming into the story later. Although I myself am not going to be on the side of those witch hunters. So Elia Kazan it is. Excellent. And this is someone whose name is going to be on the poster. This is someone who was a very well-known director by 1955. I think he actually made East of Eden in 1955. I'd have to double check that, but that's around when Elia Kazan was just the name on the poster, right? Now, so Eugene will get Mr. Kazan on the phone right away, and heard from a friend of a friend he's interested in working with you. Well, that's nice. There's a knock on the door. They're starting over in C stage. Let's do some screen tests. Okay, let's get some actors here. And we want to have very famous people here as our leads. We can have less famous people as a supporting cast, but people who have experience, like particularly on the stage doing this sort of material. That was Streetcar Named Desire. Streetcar Named Desire, the two leads were very well-known stars, Marlon Brando and Vivian Lee. But then you also had people who were from the stage playing the supporting players, playing them very well, but they weren't as big stars as the two leads. Now, let's see, filling the roles in Miss Rita has been a tricky process, but we have candidates here. For the leading man, the dangerous car mechanic. I love that. A list of possibilities. A friend of mine. No, I think that's what I did last time. We just went with a friend of mine. We're going to go with an A-list star. Here's an option, myself. I would love to choose that just to see where this game would go with myself playing the lead part. Oh, that actor from the diner, Zeno Cooper. Huh. Or my friend, comedy legend Fish Grundy. Well, we can reject Fish Grundy right off the bat. This is not a comedy. Although Fish Grundy could be a supporting player in this. Zeno Cooper, though. No, that actor from the diner, that's not going to work. We need an A-list star for the leading man. Again, the leading players should be A-list. We can bring in these other people like Zeno Cooper and Fish Grundy as supporting players. This is going to be a huge production. So yes, an A-list star. A big name star will jack up your picture's budget, but guarantee instant recognition. Of course, a famous personality can be complicated. They can be tricky to work with, and it's risky to cast them outside of the kind of roles their public expects to see them in. Okay, this is important. Typecasting. This is the double-edged sword of having A-list stars. A-list stars are usually A-list because they are of a certain type, and they must be cast according to type if you want to have, or you want to have as low a risk as possible with your production. The stars themselves were of two minds about this. Like, a lot of stars didn't really want to be typecast. But they understood that that was what made them so successful. So what do we do here? Who is the best possible person for this role? We need someone young. So John Wayne, no. We need someone, who else? Vincent Price, no. Sidney Poitier would be very interesting. I would be tempted to go with Sidney Poitier, but actually Frank Sinatra might be the best choice here. Looking at method acting here, I don't see method actors on this list. Maybe I should probably show more stars. Let's see if we can get an actual method actor. Marlon Brando, no, for Marlon Brando. Here we go. It's going to be Marlon Brando, obviously. Some interesting choices here. Rock Hudson would be an interesting choice, especially for a romantic melodrama. But I'm going to go with Marlon Brando just because I thought from the very beginning Marlon Brando would be the star, the best star for this movie. So we're going with that. Cool. Marlon Brando. Directed by Elia Kazan. Well, it's like a reunion here for the Streetcar Named Desire. Now, the leading lady, the straight-laced lawyer, is harder to cast. Yes, always hard to cast the leading lady. Now, who should it be? Again, an A-list star, but not necessarily a method actor. Let's see. Lucille Ball. That would be fun. Katharine Hepburn. Although Katharine Hepburn is again, the age here, we need to be conscious of that. Someone who would play against a young Marlon Brando appropriately here in a dramatic piece. Carmen Miranda, no. Maureen O'Hara, no. I mean, Marilyn Monroe might work because she was a method actor known for romance and comedy, but was also very interested in extending herself into drama. And I mean, this was the time for Marilyn Monroe. She was a huge star. And we're talking about the character here, a straight-laced lawyer. You might think, well, you wouldn't cast Marilyn Monroe as that. But the whole point is that she's going to be in a romantic relationship with Marlon Brando, who's a dangerous car mechanic. Marlon Brando, already casting Marlon Brando, this handsome young man, as a dangerous car mechanic, you're already in the realm of fantasy with that. So casting Marilyn Monroe as this straight-laced lawyer would probably not be so off base. Let's look at more stars, and then let's see if someone better than Marilyn Monroe emerges. But if not, we'll just go with Marilyn Monroe. Rita Hayworth would be good. Ruby D. Grace Kelly would be very good, although I don't know if Grace Kelly and Marlon Brando would be a good. See, the whole point of a romantic movie, whether it's a melodrama or a comedy, is you need the chemistry. You need the chemistry between the two. And I don't really see Marlon Brando and Grace Kelly having very good chemistry. Betty Davis. If this was 10 years earlier, absolutely we would do Betty Davis here. I think one of the great lost movies of all time was having Marlon Brando and Betty Davis in a movie together. That would be amazing. Jane Russell would be quite a good choice here. But again, we're talking about people who like 10 years earlier would have been good. Here we go. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor is probably the best choice here. This is the right time. She's not really a method player, but again, that's perfectly fine. In fact, you want that kind of tension. That's what we had in Streetcar Named Desire. You had Marlon Brando, a method trained actor. You had Vivien Leigh, who was a classically trained actor, and having them work together was like the tension. I mean, the fireworks on the screen were extraordinary. And Elizabeth Taylor with Marlon Brando would be very interesting to watch, I think. I mean, they, of course, made a movie together. I mean, Elizabeth Taylor was someone who played in movies that were based on stage plays, like Tennessee Williams wrote Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and Elizabeth Taylor was the star of the adaptation of that movie. Marlon Brando wasn't the star in that movie. That was Paul Newman in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. But it was a very successful production. And so why not have Elizabeth Taylor and Marlon Brando? Excellent. So your masthead talent will be starring Marlon Brando as the dangerous car mechanic and Elizabeth Taylor as the straight-laced lawyer in Miss Rita. We assume that Elizabeth Taylor is the title character, Miss Rita. Rita Hayworth, again, would probably be a good choice, but given that the movie is called Miss Rita, I think audiences would get confused. So no, Rita Hayworth would not be good as Miss Rita. Not too shabby, it says. Yeah, not too shabby. This is shaping up to be like a monumental production for 1955. A short time later, Elizabeth and Marlon arrive on set. Oh, so we're on a first name basis now with Elizabeth and Marlon. Maybe I'll call Elizabeth Betty. And Marlon Marley. Hey, Marley. And they are going to submit to the screen test. Getting a sense of their chemistry together is an important part of the process. Absolutely. Absolutely. Two huge egos clashing. But that's what we want. We want that chemistry. We want the clash. We want the tension. Elizabeth shakes our hand. Oscar, it's such a pleasure. Her trademark winning smile spreading across her face. Did she have a trademark winning smile? I don't know about that. I'm glad you say. I'm a big admirer of your work. Before long, the crew is ready for the test. The first time in front of the lights is a little rusty. Okay, now same thing as before. There's a problem with the ventilation. And here's where and so Marlon Brando is wilting in the heat and starts cracking wise. You're running a studio or a sauna in here, Oscar. Marlon Brando, a very humorous individual, considered to be a prankster, who, as time went on, became more of a legend in the industry. Just someone who, parts were always too small for Marlon Brando. A lot like what happened with Orson Welles. I mean, in a way, Marlon is like an Orson Welles type character here. So what do we do with this? Do we tell the crew to hurry things up so the talent can get out of this heat? Here's the thing. Again, the project is going to be the emphasis here, not the people. Now, Marlon Brando and Elizabeth Taylor are not the people. They are the project. And so we need to serve them, and we need to serve this project. So we're not going to tell, there's an option here to say, tell the talent, that's Marlon Brando and Elizabeth Taylor, to quit grousing and do their jobs. No. We are going to tell the crew to hurry things up so the talent can get out of this heat. That's right. Hurry things up, crew. We are serving the project. The crew seems to be calm enough to understand the point behind the request, so they pick up the pace. They manage to get the work they needed done quickly, trimming a bit off your budget for the day. So see, driving the crew gets good results. And crews need to be driven. I mean, crews, they're only as good as the manager or the management. And as the producer, that's my responsibility. Now the crew is going to move on to test some smaller roles. And now it looks like Zeno Cooper is going to be assistant director. All right, just like Vincent Cooper in the previous one. The day drags on and my attention wanders. And there's a particular grip. Okay, now here's the potential on-set romance, which in the previous playthrough I encouraged as much as possible. This time, though, I'm going to reject it because it's not good for the project. And but we're going to say this will be, there's something quite attractive about this precision and prescience of this grip. Not to mention the man himself, the woman herself, the person behind it. Irrelevant. Like all these things about this grip are irrelevant. Basically, it's a grip. I have no interest in romance. So we're just going to go with the top choices here. The man himself. I stick out my hand, try not to make him feel uncomfortable. Says, and now what do I say? Call me Oscar, please. Frown. Yes, we are going to be discouraging here. Call me Oscar, please. Frown. The grip shuffles his feet awkwardly. Oscar, right. You've been working as a grip for 5 years, so I feel a flush of embarrassment asking such a personal question. Let's just get through. We need to get rid of this person. The grip says, I hear you have a reputation for being a hard ass. Okay, that's good. So we're hearing about the buzz in the crew about being a little more hard driving. But that's good. But the grip says, you should know up front, I don't stand for being worked like a dog or not getting no respect. I like to see everyone on a show treated like a human being. He looks at you with a bit of defiance. All right. So not only can we close the door on a romance here, but we can further assert ourselves as the manager of the set. We're going to serve the project here, not the people. So I have the choice here. Maybe I should try to treat my crew a little better, or the work is what really matters. Art is not made by punching out at 5. Option 2 says, yes, I drive people hard, you say, but that's what it takes to realize a vision. Sometimes people need to be pushed a little to produce truly great work. Some people can't take the heat, but it brings out the best in others. Exactly right. The grip is frowning, is a little alarmed. I guess probably thinking like he probably shouldn't push things with me, or he'll wind up outside. He'll wind up with his ass on the street. Putting his foot in his mouth. No disrespect intended. And then I say, no, it's fine. Glad to have you on board. Okay. Now, what is the name of this person? Bert, top choice, whatever. Bert McKenzie, sounds good. I don't want anything to do with Bert McKenzie except just do your job and do it well. Do I invite Bert to dinner? Absolutely not. I like to invite him to dinner, but I'm not sure it would be appropriate given my position. I'm not sure it would be appropriate. It would absolutely not be appropriate. It was nice meeting him, but I should really get back to work. Exactly. We should really get back to work, you say. He nods, a little disappointed, of course. Nice to meet you too. All right, with that out of the way, the rest of the day is uneventful. And now we get a call from Ilya Kazan, who'd be thrilled to direct the picture. All the pieces are finally in place. Awesome. We have Ilya Kazan as director for this movie. I have no doubt that this is gonna play into the communist witch hunt narrative later, but I guess we'll have to see what happens then. All right, now a familiar young voice shouts, "Watch out!" And I whirl around, and it's Josie the niece. The Josie the niece has done the good thing she did previously, which is to prevent a disaster on the set by noticing something going wrong. All right, do I say I don't want to show favoritism, scold my niece? Or family comes first? I think I said family comes first last time. That's not what I'm going to do this time. I don't want to show favoritism, scold my niece. That's exactly what's going to happen here. Don't you tell this gentleman what his job is, Josie. I'm sure he appreciates what you did, but it's not your place to get in the way of the professionals here. Kind of a jerk, but Josie should not be anywhere near this set. Yes, Mr. Zhu, she says quietly. The worker returns to work. Now, I turn to my niece, Josie. I'm sure the gentleman appreciates what you did, but that doesn't change the fact that you shouldn't have been here. A film set's a dangerous place. It could have been you under that crane. What would your mother think? I feel guilty about the fact that Josie wants to hang around with me and not be with my sister, who is her mother, after all. And then I say, look, Josie, you can't sulk around my film set unsupervised. But if you clear it with Eugene, you can come visit every now and then. All right, that's reasonable. Thanks, Uncle Oscar, she says, and is off. Okay. By the end of the day, you're bushed. And then I see in the news that Lloyd Krogan is beginning production on a new racy drama. So exactly like the previous time, it looks like my old boss is poaching my idea. The bastard's trying to scoop you. Looks like the race is on. Okay, next chapter. It looks like we are on our first day of shooting. And so what's happening now? All right, let's see what happens with the project now. Now, Olga, the writer, I guess, has already done some changes here. Yeah, it looks like the quality has gone up. I think the quality used to be 80%. Now it's 85%. With a even balance between intense and relaxing, which is good. Mainly familiar and accessible, but with some originality and intellectuality. That's good. Crew's stress is manageable. And so on the production, acting, directing is up there, but we'll see about the acting and the craft. I guess we're going to try and push these numbers up as much as possible. Okay, here we go. Olga managed to improve the screenplay significantly, though the process made it somewhat more conventional. Yeah, I can see that. I can see we actually have it less original, but that's fine. Absolutely fine. Not a moment too soon. Production begins today. And we are substantially over budget. We are 24% over budget, which is much higher than it was previously. But that's okay. We're getting the best. Quality craft. It says quality craft, acting, and directing are all important for a well-rounded picture. Well, that's kind of a common sense thing, but obviously those things have real consequences with this decisions you make about budgets and schedules. So what's going on here? Here we go. The project is becoming much more important than the people. This is the opposite of what was happening previously. Let's see, personal relationships with Zeno Cooper is good, but not with my niece or the grip. That's good. We want to keep these numbers roughly the same. You've noticed there's been a lot of grumbling among the crew lately. Furtive glances, meetings with union reps. Oh no. Maybe you're working your people too hard. Union reps. Yeah, well, hey, look, we're making a Marlon Brando, Elizabeth Taylor movie with Elia Kazan. We're not making a multi-camera sitcom for TV, right? We're not making The Honeymooners here. Okay, now we are hurrying to B stage. And this is the first day of shooting. We round up the key players, including Elia Kazan. And now I say, thank you for all being here, touching the red brim of my fedora. That's my affectation. I can't tell you how excited and privileged I am to be setting out on this journey with you all. Marlon Brando grins and slaps me on the back. So good. So, see, Marlon Brando supporting what I'm doing. Any questions? So Elia Kazan says, I've got one Oscar. What kind of pace are we? I thought he was saying I got one Oscar, like one, meaning one Academy Award. Did Elia Kazan win an Academy Award for either Streetcar Named Desire or East of Eden? I don't know. I'm trying to remember. But anyway, what kind of pace are we shooting for? Will we have time for a lot of retakes? We have to get the performances. We have to get the performances right. I mean, this is all about the performances. And Elia Kazan is there for that reason, to get the best out of Brando and Taylor. So let the actors take all the time they need to get the performances right. But there's also the choice to let the crew take all the time necessary to get the shot technically perfect. Last time, I think I went with, we'll keep shooting until everyone is happy, even if that means going over budget. That's not what we want, right? We want the actors to take all the time they need to get the performance right. Marlon taps a pencil, and Oscar, how do you want us to play this scene? Follow the script straight, or do you want to allow for improv? Would Marlon Brando actually ask that question? Hey, is it okay if I improvise? First of all, you don't hire Marlon Brando unless you want improvisation. And secondly, with that in mind, he would never have to ask that question, right? So do what feels right. The script is just a rough guide. The important thing is to do whatever the director wants. Now now the director, Elia Kazan, was known for being quite controlling, but controlling in a way where he understood the method behind the method. And the method behind the method is you need to give the actors the space they need to get their preparation fixed, like to get in the emotional, like in order to express the emotional reality of the character, the method actor needs to prepare for that. Now, that requires the director to be somewhat patient, but also to be somewhat controlling over whether or not what that actor is doing is appropriate for the scene. So it's kind of a balancing act with method acting. Like you want the players to have the freedom to get into that space where they can convey those emotions. However, without strong direction, they may go too far in one direction or another, and then suddenly the performances. I mean, if you've seen bad method acting, like that's not necessarily a problem with the actor so much it is the problem with the director not understanding like the need for control in that moment. the script is just a rough guide. See, that's not what I want either. I'm going to go with the important thing is to do whatever the director wants. I'm going to trust Elia Kazan to know what to do here. So I'm not going to say do what feels right, but I'm also not going to say follow the script very carefully. We're going to do what the director wants. Now, we are going to have technical decisions here. We're going to shoot this in color, which is more expensive, but is becoming increasingly expected, especially for A pictures. Absolutely, we want this in color, not black and white. Streetcar Named Desire was in black and white, but that was set mainly in intimate spaces. I mean, based on a play, set mainly indoors, so very limited locations there, and so but we're going for the setting here, the sleeping Midwestern town. We want the landscape to be part of the experience, right? So we're going to do this in color. Now the ratio should be, let's go with widescreen here. We want widescreen. The Academy ratio, I believe Streetcar Named Desire was shot close to the Academy ratio. East of Eden, I think, was also shot in the, no, I think East of Eden was done in widescreen or in the Academy ratio. It was not the ultra widescreen or the scope format. I believe Rebel Without a Cause was shot in the ultra widescreen format. How much that gave to the production in terms of revenue, I don't know. If that was very appealing to audiences. If performances are so important here that you need a bit more of the boxy ratio to get those players the center of attention here, not so much the landscape. So we're going to go with widescreen. Now we take the slate from Eugene. Here's the deal. Zoo Pictures, production number 1, Miss Rita, director Elia Kazan. Who should do the honors? Who do we want to improve relationships with? I think I let my niece do the honors last time. Well, I think the AD should do it, right? It's my studio after all. I deserve to be the one to do it. Someone from the crew should do the honors. What is the result of this, do you think? Like, would my relationship with the crew be better if I let someone from the crew do the honors? No, the star Marlon Brando should do the honors. Absolutely. I mean, the star, Marlon Brando is a star. The star does the honors here. Marlon Brando holds the slate in front of the lens. I mean, this could be publicity for the studio. Have Marlon Brando as the first clapper, the first clap of the slate. And action. Like magic, the first scene begins. Now, the scene we're starting is from early in the script. This is good. When Marlon's car mechanic makes the crucial decision that sets the whole plot in motion, the performance, coached carefully by Elia Kazan, leaps straight into the dangerous heart of the character, and it's going to be a delight to see him play scenes with Elizabeth Taylor's straight-laced lawyer. This sounds really good, actually. As the day's shoot wears on, your direction from earlier seems to be paying off. With room to experiment and do multiple takes, the cast really eases into the roles, often coming up with something brilliant on the 5th or 7th take that's far better than the first attempt. All good. This is all good. After a hard morning's work, the AD calls check the gate. And let's see, Eugene is alarmed. Something's happening now. A couple of unauthorized visitors. Of course, this is from the previous playthrough here. We get the unauthorized visitation of Krogan, who's got his cigar. Oscar Zoo, he says, sorry to drop in unannounced. Just wanted to offer congratulations on your new enterprise. Now what do I do here? Again, what's good for the movie? I don't have time for this, right? I appreciate the visit, Krogan, but I'm afraid I have to ask you to leave now. Or do I say get out? Ordering the bastard around will feel damn good. I'm not that bitter. It's like, okay, so I left his studio bitterly, but I was at the studio for 10 years. I mean, it would be fine to, at least say I appreciate the visit, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave because we're making a movie here, right? I mean, that would be what I would expect him to do to me if I went on to his set, right? So let's do this. I appreciate the visit, Krogan, but I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave now. Krogan's on his way out. I simply wanted to congratulate you. and then said he brought an old friend. Okay, here we go. Jonathan Creed, the head of the new committee for the investigation of Hollywood's un-Americanism. We now begin the subplot, the anti-communist witch hunt. Creed is basically the same as in the previous playthrough, but my responses, of course, will be different. I will treat Creed with the utmost contempt. I will antagonize this man as much as possible because I have a moral backbone in this version of the story. That might not be good for the production. That might have the government sicking people like Creed on the production. But hey, that's how things may fall or not. So Mr. Zoo, he says, Jonathan Creed, there are so many of you independents cropping up like mushrooms. His metaphors are not flattering. I've had to hire 2 new staffers just this week to keep track of you all. Oh, the poor guy. So now I say, that sounds like a lot of work. Aren't there easier targets Congress could be investigating? Drug cartels, gangsters, murderers, perhaps? Yeah, we're going to start on the wrong foot here with Jonathan Creed. He offers a brief, withering smile, like someone invited to pet a hated neighbor's dog. Zoo, that's Chinese, isn't it? That's funny. That's somehow this game is very good at having these little details change the way characters talk. So choosing the last name Zhu, I just did that as almost a random thing. But it's interesting to see Jonathan Creed jump all over that as a potential sign of a communism on the set. Simply paranoid response. And he says, I trust I have your cooperation in rooting out any subversive elements that may try to infiltrate your production. And I say, you harass my cast or crew, Creed, and I'll see you in court. Yep, I'm going to be aggressive here, aggressively against this whole witch hunt. His face darkens. Perhaps you don't realize, Mr. Zhu, that we're at war. It's an easy fact to miss. This is not a war of uniforms and battlefields like those of the past. This fight is on our own soil. This is like something out of an anti-communist propaganda movie or documentary. These enemies are spies and subversives, people who seem like good ordinary Americans on the outside. And then he looks me up and down, people who could be any one of us. So if you harass me, Mr. Zhu, or fail to comply with my investigations, I can charge you with treason, conspiracy, abetting the enemy, or any of a number of other offenses appropriate for someone actively impeding the national security and trying to destroy the American way of life. Now, Jonathan Creed personally can't charge anyone. I mean, obviously law enforcement and the judicial system has to handle that. But of course, we're talking about culturally speaking, you can have someone like this politician threatening people directly, and that could actually have an effect. Like that could actually make people believe, okay, we could be in trouble if we don't cooperate. So now again, the script is an issue here. The script is perverted with so now again we have little details here are different because we're not doing what we did previously, a social satire romantic comedy. Now we have a racy romantic melodrama. So now there are elements that are downright unacceptable. It's perverted and unwholesome sexual themes, the disrespectful attitude of this dangerous car mechanic character. The title's vague allusions to distasteful themes. Miss Rita. So Miss Rita, the title, that is a vague allusion to distasteful themes. What could possibly be distasteful about that? Now says, I'm sure you'll be receptive to the changes I've suggested to make this more the kind of picture that wholesome American audiences would like to see. You flip through it lightly. Now here's a little fantasy fulfillment here. Like, wouldn't you love to be in the position of facing down this government hack and just basically mocking with their whole effort here? Let's see. We'll be happy to make these changes. Do I lie and say we're happy to make these changes? That's interesting. I could say we'll be happy to make these changes, but as a complete lie, just to get him, make him feel like we're going to cooperate, but we're really not. Or do I simply say I'm not changing a word? Since I have the option to lie here, I'm going to go with that because, again, the whole point is here, what's good for the project? If we're too antagonistic with these government hacks, it could be bad for the production. They could try to shut us down, or to either directly trying to shut us down, or through planting stories in the media against the production that would have it shut down in that more indirect way. So we don't want to antagonize Creed too much here. So let's do this. We're going to lie and say we'll be happy to make these changes, but we're really not going to make any changes at all. That's working the system. That's playing the system. Creed nods. I'm sure I can count on your assistance. Good day. All right, Creed is gone. I'm sure he'll be back, but we are now proceeding. Those bastards, Eugene says. How dare they come in here and threaten you? It's okay. They're not going to stop us. See, again, I'm like this hero now of the I'm standing up for those who are persecuted by this anti-communist witch hunt. The rest of the day's shoot goes well, and I forget this encounter by lunch. Ilya Kazan directs with the mastery of a skilled professional, moving from setup to setup with confidence and scattered moments of genius. It's wonderful to watch Marlon Brando and Elizabeth Taylor bring Olga Tomerlin's exquisitely crafted words to life. Marlon seems to be struggling to slip into the role. Well, I mean, Marlon Brando, struggling to slip into the role. Really? We'll see what happens here. Your style as a producer begins to take shape. Says some producers like to keep it. Okay, so here's how I'm going to approach the crew overall here. Do I drive them hard, see what they're capable of achieving, treat them well, build a family, warts and all, try to find an even balance? Okay, previously I chose to find an even balance because that would result in a very wishy-washy kind of way of treating people, which is not good. If you can go like full on hard nosed, or you can go full on nice person. Either way, going extreme is best, because that way the people who you're working with, they know who they're working with. You're predictable. They know how you're going to act, and so they will act a certain way in response to that. So it's good for the project to either drive them hard or treat them well. But in this case, I want to see what they're capable of achieving. So we're going to drive them hard. This might result in a problem with unions, but we shall see. Okay, I'm going to drive them hard. As the day moves on, you and the crew start to develop a rapport. Miss Rita seems to be off to a great start. By the time the last shot is called, your bush, there's a celebratory mood on the set. What would you like to do? Now, this is interesting. We can pursue a personal relationship with Zeno Cooper or Bert McKenzie. Better make an early night of it, a nice relaxing bath? No. Even when we're not shooting, when you're in production, the clock is always on. When you're done shooting, the work continues, right? Do we go drinking with the crew? That would actually be okay. But we could also have a quiet drink with the director, Ilya Kazan, to talk shop about the work to come. That is what we are doing. Get a quiet drink with the director, the most important hire of this production, the director. It's important to establish a good rapport with the director. Absolutely. The last thing you need is for the two of you to clash about your visions for the project. Absolutely. The two of you go to an out-of-the-way Italian place over cannoli and wine. You get to know each other a little more. Kazan had some ideas about the climax that seemed out of place, but by the end of the meal, you think you've gotten him to come around to your original vision. He has some staging ideas for the second act that are tremendously exciting. Looks like it's shaping up to be a fruitful collaboration. Okay, good. The next morning, there is a headline in the paper announcing the production. Zoo Racy Drama starts production with Brando and Taylor. That is news. And the thing is, the newsy part of it is not zoo. The newsy part of it is Brando and Taylor. First and foremost. Secondary, racy drama. So what's the movie about? That's racy drama. And who's in it? Brando and Taylor. Who is the producer is not as important. So it says tiny newcomer Zoo Pictures lot was bustling with activity as director Ilya Kazan began shooting Miss Rita, the upstart studio's adapted picture. Spirits were high on set, bolstered by surprise visitor Lloyd Krogan delivering well wishes to former protege Zoo. Uh, Production seems off to a smash start, although word around set is the picture is already over budget. So we have some leakers on the set, some people talking to the press, some bad news about the production. Now we have a tricky location shoot in a sleepy Midwestern town. Oh well. Well, we shall see how this goes. This is very different from the previous one, where we're actually going to Morocco to shoot some of this movie. Here, we're just going to a sleepy Midwestern town, so it shouldn't be that much of a challenge compared to the previous one. But as it says here, whatever hack reporter dredged this up is right about one thing: the location shoot's going to be the toughest challenge yet. Yes.